Hi guys, welcome back to our Porsche restoration project. In this video we're going to take a look at the front control arms, cross member, and also our steering rack and see how we can get back to the original factory settings of our angles and specific measurements on these items before we disassemble them. One of the problems if we disassemble these parts too soon without having a jig or some kind of a mechanism to put them back at the same angles, it's going to be very difficult to get back there. A lot of guesswork would be involved and probably wouldn't get it right for several tries. So what I've done here on the control arms, I built this jig, me and a buddy of mine at the shop. It took us about 45 minutes. We knocked this out together, cut up some pieces, and really what I'm trying to do is just set this piece in a tray in a very relaxed position. None of this is under any tension right now, so this is the exact angles of the control arms as I pulled it off the car. And I really want to retain that because one of the things about this car that was in really good shape was the measurement on the suspension and no twist in the body or anything to make you want to go back and rethink it. So I want to try and get exactly back where we were when we took the car apart. That's going to be an easy way to do it. So what I'm doing is I'm just leveling the piece out in this jig, real simple plywood, squared it up in the jig, and then I put these backstops to kind of mirror the angle of our control arm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this block, a little bit of glue, and I'm going to pin nail that guy in a very resting state right up against it. Not putting any pressure on it, just putting it up until it stops. Then I'm going to nail that on there, let the glue dry, and then at that point we have an exact pattern which we can get back to when we take this unit apart, want to get back together. Also, I've got a jig I've made up for the front steering rack. This also is something that the factory had. This is not exactly a factory model, but it's doing the same thing. There's probably several ways you can build one of these. This is just one of them. So on this steering rack, the inner tie rods are a very specific angle. I'm going to sight down here. You can see they're a very specific angle and measurement to the shaft. They're in about this measurement in here, maybe heavy 16th in there to the nut, but this angle right here, let me get that camera in there. I'm resting now on the metal portion, which is this metal inner ring here. My angle cut is resting right on that guy, so that's an exact measurement, and I have not touched this piece. This is still stationary and set from the factory. So what I've done is I've set this block up, screwed it down to the board to reference me. Then I can pull this pin here. I can remove this block, and then what I've done is I've taken a 10 millimeter drill bit and a stop on there, and I've measured that distance at that angle to the board. So then what I'm going to do on this other side, when I reset my angle on this side, this is loose at the moment, but when I reset this, I just slide this guy back through here. We're going to get the same angle here on the other side, and then this measurement in here also is very specific. It's about within the correct range. So if I back this out one full revolution, it's going to be way too far out, and if I try to go one more full revolution, it's not going to bottom out in there. So this is where we need to be. How do we get that angle? So here's our distance, and then as soon as that stops right there, that's our angle. So that's an exact mirror of the other side. So I'm going to nut this down, put this side back together. Once this is stationary, then I can take this side apart and duplicate this inner tie rod. Okay, well, let me get those things done. We'll strip these things down and then get them started. Okay, got our left side installed and nutted down as tight as I can get it. And I'm just using a crescent wrench, large crescent wrench, to get in there and pull that over as tight as I can. Got my jig clamped to the bench. This also is a steel frame bench, so nothing bending or flexing there. Clamped down really well so I don't get any twist on that. And I've got my locking nut to set our angle there, and also to make sure we're 90 degrees right down to the bottom. So everything being in position there, I can torque this down tight as I can get it, and then set our measurement with our measuring tool here, our 10 millimeter drill bit, and stop. You can see that's stopping right on that inner spindle. and then also down here at the bottom. So both are stopping at the same time, even though it's kind of hard to get that camera in there to show you exactly what's going on. But that's where it needs to be. So I'm going to bend this tab over, and that'll finish that side. Now I'm going to take this side apart. I'm going to replate those inner nut and lockdown tab, and then POR 15 this guy also, and put it back together. Okay, let's have a look and see what happens now with our angle. Our glue block is on there. It's set up nice and tight. And then, so this is our adjustment screw. I need to take this guy out, replate this one, and this is our hold down clamping screw. That also needs to be replated. So watch what happens when I torque that down against our block. So I'm pulling clockwise. See how it starts to lift off the block there? It's just real easy. And now if I go the other way, counterclockwise, we can get back there real easy and right on the money, right there. So real easy to get back there if you build your jig first. Okay, so I just removed the circlips from all four corners, front and rear, and then to get the torsion bar out of there, I just want to gently tap with some kind of a drifting tool from the front. So they'll push from the front to the rear. And basically, that's just going to slide right out of there. Just like that. So real easy. No forces against you here. Only time our torsion bar has anything loaded up on it with stress is when the weight of the car works against the torsion bar, which is really what the design is all about. These guys just come straight out. There you go. Okay, so we'll get this disassembled, cleaned up. I'm going to POR 15 the outer casing here. I'm going to replate the bolts, get some new hard bushings in there from Porsche, and some new front bushings, and put it back together. Okay, so stripping off the hard bushings then, what I've done is I've just taken a cutoff wheel and a Dremel and just cut down this outer casing. A couple minutes it cuts right through, and then you can peel that off with a screwdriver. And then the inner sleeve, a little bit thicker, get the sunlight to cooperate here, a little thicker material but real soft, same thing with a cutoff wheel, going with it this direction until I can't go any farther up against this big washer, and then I'm turning direction and just kind of working it out, and then also this other way, and you can see now, no problem, get that out of there. It just splits and falls right off. A lot of ways to get these out of here. Some guys would probably heat them up, try some gear pullers or presses. I'm a big fan of just cutting and peeling away. Okay, let's get this off of there and then move on with our POR 15. So let's have a quick look at our POR 15 setup and staging before we begin here. Got the whole area masked off with plastic, and even behind the area, just in case we have any little flying bits, because it is quite messy when you're applying this stuff. Pouring it from the can into a quart cup, double strainer, make sure we don't have any contamination in there, and then using a nice Worcester brush to apply that. That's an 1.5 inch angled SAS brush. Done a video on this process earlier in the series. You might refer back to that on how to properly apply this stuff. Staging really is half the battle here. On these parts, what I've done is I've clamped a couple clamps to the bench and then slid these right over the end of the clamp, which allows me to turn it and maneuver it and get all around that piece quite easily without touching anything. And then also our cross member. This guy here, I've got a couple of pipes set up. I can pull this off here while I'm painting with it, maneuver it around, then when I'm done or close to the end here, I can just slide it back over this guy and then finish off the end. And then while I've got the mess out, I do as many miscellaneous pieces as I can get going while we got the mess going. So not too bad. If you get your prep work and setup done, this goes quite smooth. Okay, let's get some paint going. Okay, so what I'm doing when we get this piece started is I'm brushing it out, holding it by hand so I can turn it around and work all the areas that are hard to get to. And then once I get all this brushed out, just slide it back over the clamp there, and then just finish off this area I was holding with my hand. That way I can get around it quickly and make sure everything's covered. Okay, got through that fairly uneventful. Let's take a look and see what's happening here. So this is my first coat on there. You can see the rough casting part. It's going to need another application probably in 2-3 hours from now. Temperature in here is about 77 degrees, so this is going to set up a little bit quicker than if it was 60-ish. And then smooth surface, we're just going to leave that one coat. One coat works best on anything smooth and freshly blasted. The reason we got to put 2 coats on anything rough casting is because of how it drains away from the high peaks. But we'll go ahead and second coat that, and it'll turn out looking really sharp. Let's look at these guys. It's been about half hour since I put this on here. Just a beautiful, beautiful jet black coating. Nice and durable and real easy to apply. So I'll put a second coat on the rough castings and then let this set up for about a week. And then we'll throw it back in the jig and put it back together. So let's just have a quick look at our inner tie rod and see how that turned out. So we got our new replacement tie rod in place. This is our locating pin. You can see it slides in and out, no problem, no resistance there. Nutted down nice and tight. We got our flange bent over. And same distance here, equal distance here as equal distance here is where that locating pin is. So again, if we're 1 revolution too far this way or 1 revolution too far this way, we wouldn't be able to line our pin up. So that's going to work out pretty good there. And then you can see we're sitting right down on our angle with that inner sleeve. Looks just like the factory tie rod we pulled out of there. Okay, so this one looks like it's going to be okay. Got our measuring tool on this side, mirroring our angle. And again, there's a lot of ways you can make a jig to do this. If you're a welding guy, you could probably make a really cool one of these. So we're going to stop here on the steering rack and catch that up on another video, as I want to integrate that with some other steering components. There's more work to be done here. But for this video, we're just going to wrap it up with a control arm assembly, install our bushings, and get this guy basically ready to install on the car. Okay, so getting on with our hard bushings then. So here's our replacement bushing from Porsche. It's our part number. So what I've done is I've assembled the left side. Just kind of do a dry run here, see how things are going to work out. Real tight getting it in, bushing to control arm. However, control arm, sliding it into the cross member. This is not too bad. You can actually do that by hand. But putting it on the control arm, using an impact, tolerances are very, very tight. So right now I've got the control arm in the freezer, hoping to get us a little bit more clearance on that as I drive it on there. So what we're doing, we're using a liquid soap to lubricate the hard inner surfaces, anything that's metal to metal. We're not going to put grease on that, just a liquid soap. And what's going to happen, the tolerances are so tight as it slides onto the control arm, you're actually just squeegeeing it off. So there's not much lubrication on there by the time you get to the end of it. Here's our old guys. Just, not too bad after 50 years, a little mushroomed out. Definitely need replacing though. You see the inner sleeve. Just get working that edge there, it just pops, just cracks and splits, falls right off of there. Okay, so let me go get that right side. We're going to set that up in the jig here and slide our all thread through there while it's still cold, and then get my impact out and start driving that on there. Okay, so we're working kind of fast because it is cold. You can see the frost built up on there. So we got the thick washer here. Inside of this washer has got a chamfered edge, and that's going to go right over this this protrusion area here. So chamfered edge to the inside, the flat side would be to the bushing. I'll slide that guy on there. Even that's fairly snug. Okay, and then I'm going to take a little synthetic grease. I want to use synthetic grease as opposed to petroleum-based on any kind of rubber type application, so a little bit of rubber grease. And what this is going to be for is to slide up against our washer, because you may get some movement in there as the suspension works. So I don't want any squeaking going on in there. And then also a good amount of lubrication. So I've got a fair amount going there. Not worrying about putting too much on, because it will squeegee off of there. But if it dries out on you while you're trying to put it on, it could be real difficult to install. Okay, so we're just doing the inside first. We're not going to coat this at this time. Let's put that guy on there. We're going to slide that on. Just barely get it started. And then we're going to slide our washers on. Let it down. My hand's all sticky. Okay. All right, so we're going to just leave the nut out to the farthest end there, push it back this way, and then we're going to tighten down the back side. That's the side that can draw in. So once I start my impacting, we'll have to stop, readjust as it's sliding in. Okay, let me get the impact going. Okay, make sure we got plenty of lubricant on our shaft here as it's sliding in. This seems like it's going on a little bit easier with it being cold. Just make sure we got plenty of lube on there. All right, let's try it again. All right, little by little. All right, probably have to do that half dozen times, but we get near the end there, we'll take a look at that as it tightens up. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. I hope I didn't tear your ears out. Let's just take a close-up look and see what's going on here. So, stack of washers working real nice on our inner sleeve. Good pressure there. It's pushing it on nice and straight. And then now that we're getting close to our washer, what's going to happen when I tighten that down, this is going to bottom out against our washer, and we're going to get a slight bulge on this rubber piece, and you're going to see grease start to ooze out of there. Once you start to see that, that's far enough in. Doesn't have to be pressed in there super hard. You just want it to be touching. You want this washer to remain stationary, and then you're good. I think we're there. You can see here we're bottomed out. A little bit of grease starting to make its way to the surface there between that washer and the bushing. And then you can see also bottomed out between the control arm and the inner sleeve. So those washers are doing a real nice job of taking it right where it's got to be. So not really possible to over tighten that. It'll just stop, and you'll be right on the money. All right, let's put this guy back in the jig and then get the rest of this thing put together. So what we're going to do here, we're going to take some soap, run around the inside here, get some on the outside of this bushing, and then when I insert into the cross member, I'm going to put it in so that our angle is basically in line with our block. That's going to get me within range when I put our end caps on there, and then we can just fine tune it with the adjustment screw. Okay, and then what I'm using here is a box wrench, crescent wrench, and just driving it in by hand. See, that's real easy to do. Going into the cross member. And you can see we're trying to keep that same approach angle to our block. Easy enough to move with that adjustment screw once we get it in place. So watch what happens now that we're there. When I back off the pressure with the nut, you can see it actually relaxing. And if I tighten the nut, you can see it start to ooze out. So once we back the nut off and pull that all thread out of there, it just ends up nice and comfortable where it wants to be. You see that grease oozing out of there. All right, so now we're loose. It's in exact position. So moving on to the torsion bars then. So what we want to do is we want to coat these with a real nice thick coat of lithium grease. The manual calls out for lithium grease to be used on this. And I think they use that basically for washout conditions. So let's just say this was in a flooded environment, water traveling down this tunnel, trying to make its way out over time. The lithium grease is going to hold up a little bit better than a general purpose grease. So I think that's why they spec that. Otherwise, you could probably just use just about anything, coat these. Also, the other important thing with these torsion bars, they're labeled right and left. You can see the stamp on there. So this is my right side, and then the left side also got a stamp. You got to be real careful you don't mix these up. So right side to the right side. I've also labeled my board so I don't accidentally put the wrong one in there. And then the stamp goes to the rear of the cross member. So make sure it's right on right to the rear and left on left to the rear, and that way you won't end up breaking anything. So let me get those coated and we'll slide those in. Okay, slide that in there. And then we want to put our end cap on. Also, we want to put a little grease on the outside of this guy because that will be pivoting. And I've got plenty of grease on here. So what I'm going to do when I slide this in here, get the splines. Okay, so we're splined in the front. I've got my retainer clips in the front so it can't be pushed through. And then when I put this guy in, I'm trying to select a distance here. So we're already sitting down on our stop on our jig. So I'm going to select a distance here that's going to give us some range of adjustment. I've got about a 1/2 inch in there. If I pulled this out and went maybe one higher, we're too high, or again, one lower, we don't have any adjustments. So not too hard really to select a distance. I think right there has a nice adjustment range. So then I'll just push that torsion bar in, and then throw my lock in there, and then we're ready for our adjustment screw. All right, I think we're there on this one. So got everything in position. Have our hold down clamping screw torqued down. Got our adjustment screw about where we need it. Only thing on this thing, I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to have a little Loctite on there before we assemble on the car. You can see we're back to our factory positioning on both sides, and fairly easily adjustable from there. Also, front bushings, these will be replaced. This is my original on here just to show you, but they just slide right on and clamp down. Put a little silicone grease in there when we're ready, and install it on the shell. That's pretty much it for your control arms. Only thing really to watch out on this one is when you're installing your torsion bars, just to double check you have your left on your left side, your right on your right side, and that should keep you out of trouble. Well, that's it for this one, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.